Lemon Amiga presents a Playguide video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Now it's shaking up the knee! Gonna kill me in me! Yeah, the ladies want to come! You been!
Hello, welcome to another Lemon Amiga Playguide and review. In this one, it gives me great pleasure to present yet another game which was not actually released. This was Leading Lap MPV AGA, not published by Black Legend in 1995. Yes, this is a 3D racing game. Can this stand up to F1 GP? Well, let's find out in this review, and it begins with an introduction and also some great music. Yes, this game was produced in Camden Town by a local gang headed up by Tony Dillon, and if that name sounds familiar, then, well, that's because it's the same Tony Dillon that reviewed lots of these games. And Tony Dillon, as we shall find out later on, had a key part to play in creating this. He helped produce it, he helped design it, and he also helped create the graphics. And creating the graphics for a 3D game on an Amiga isn't particularly easy. In this game, we gain a selection of drivers before we start, and you can see that all those will have different statistics which we can view. And if this game instantly reminds you of No Second Prize, well, yes, this was also included in No Second Prize. And you can see Claudia Powers. Well, there is always a lady in this game that tends to have the best driving abilities, so that's probably the one which I'll probably select for this playthrough. And yes, I've never seen this game even before, and I've only just heard about this game, and as usual I recorded this over a year ago, so I'm only just seeing it again at that time. But you can see all of these players have different statistics, and this guy has higher top speed. But let's choose Claudia for this playthrough, and let's also choose the rally car, which seems the middle of the road easiest one to drive, because I've given this just a quick playthrough just to make sure that this is actually playable. And so let's start the first race in the championship, and in the championship we get a few options. And for this playthrough I'll be using an 040 AGA setup, and I'm not quite sure if this glitching is due to the high detail level, so let's switch everything to low, and let's also switch on the other various effects in this game. And I'm not quite sure what these have in the way of speed, but I want a fast experience. And so also let's turn on the cloud graphics if that's at all possible, and internal MPV. I have no idea what that means whatsoever, but let's just move on from that because it doesn't appear to have drawn any clouds on the screen. And let's start up the first race of the championship, which is a nice easy oval. Leading Lap is a 3D racing game, but I'm not quite sure whether you can change the view. And in this game you can see we are position 1, and we are also given a time and a miles per hour. And I think you have to complete 5 laps of every given circuit, of which there are 12 circuits in this full game which we are playing at the moment. So that's us, we've gained a 43-second lap on the first track. You can hear even at this stage that the motor appears to be emanating from my left speaker, and all the screeching around on the road is coming from the right speaker, so some compromises had to be met in the audio department and some compromises in my driving style, probably trying to get used to this new track. And you can see the yellow driver, in this case he's driving a Formula 1 car.
Come on, keep pushing!
And so us being in red will have to catch up and we'll have to pass that other driver. First course isn't particularly easy and it does tend to wiggle a little bit, and don't forget this is relatively the first time I've seen this apart from one practice lap, and if you're brave you can definitely gain some speed, but unfortunately if you are just a little bit too keen then you'll fall off the track and bump into something, and bumping in this game literally does rebound us back, and sometimes that mechanic does work and sometimes it doesn't, as we are going to see during this playthrough. We find ourselves in third position, and I'm not quite sure if this is supposed to be easy mode because it didn't quite give us an easy, medium or a hard. But you can see for novices I'm only just about holding this thing together, and it's a rally car so we really should be able to screech around these corners, and the road grip in this case is only just enough to get around all the tough ones, but it is possible at this stage. Or it would be possible if the game didn't have one major flaw in it, and yes, we will see that one major flaw repeatedly a little bit later. In the meantime, we've made it in third position. Unfortunately, our time seems to have disappeared off the top of that screen, so let's just press that fire button and let's check out how we did in the first round at that championship. Well, unfortunately, we did not break the lap record and we didn't break the course record either. And driver Wall has 10 points, the second place has 7, and mean third has 3 points, with hardly any chance to catch up unless we win the next race. Let's check that race out, and without a countdown and a silent start it appears a little bit boring, but we get a heads up in first place straight from the go, and that gives us a boost as we set off. And up till now all the drivers are fairly equal unless we make a mistake, and so as long as we drive around these corners and learn these circuits, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. For some reason the sound effects also seem to be a little bit laggy for some reason, I don't quite know why, and you can see that we're playing this in the afternoon and in the evening, and it even seems to be getting darker. So yes, that is one of the graphical mayhem changes that they actually made in this game. They subtly changed the copy list to make it look as though it's going dark. And why can't every single racing game look like it's going dark? I've no idea, but it is a great effect on this otherwise hit and miss kind of driving game. And so you can see that the grip levels on the road at this speed are rather hit and miss, and if you're going off then you don't stand much of a chance to brake. And at this stage I'm just trying to anticipate all the corners. This game appears to start difficult, and we're certainly not in the Formula 1 car, unfortunately, and that's definitely one mistake. You definitely have to know which car and which driver you're capable of driving around that track. But just one off means that we are dumped down a place, and another off means that we're down to third. Can this game deliver us from the clutches of being in the back of the pack? And yes, well, no. Actually, it doesn't, because we crash off again. From a sunny sunset afternoon, it appears now to be pouring down, but we don't get any rivers of flooding water on this track. What we get instead is undrivability, and while it's raining, unfortunately this car will skid about a bit, and you will have to make lots of micro changes and corrections as long as you're turning that corner, and well, that is a feature in the game. And also is the crossroads, because if you crash into another car you will be struck out and knocked back, so you can't afford to do that either. I don't know about you, but whenever I hear that particular sound effect of us screeching and losing control at the back, it reminds me somehow of hard driving and somehow of all the games on all the systems. Surely this thing shouldn't be reminding us of the worst port onto the Amiga of all time, and yet it appears to be doing so with that particular sound effect. When you hear that, it means that you're probably going to ditch the game into the nearest tree, and there's not much you can do about it unless you let go of the controller and hope that you gain control of that vehicle. And so far so good, we are competent enough to gain third, and now the sun's come out just as we complete the race in third position. That's amazing, but 2/3 only equals 6 points, and 6 points in the championship when the leader could be on 20 by now is rather an unfair balance in the score distribution. Let's see how far we were away of anything whatsoever, and miles away it seems, and in this case Snake Kelly won, and Wall is still up there on 17 points. So let's check out the third track. Never even seen this circuit before, and if it's anything like the others, I'll be sliding off pretty readily. And yes, there are 12 tracks in this game, but most players have only seen a few of those if they got to play this on the CU cover disc, or cover CD I think it was, all the way back in 1996. Beginner's luck on the very first lap means we are still in first place, and as usual I don't tend to do much braking all the way around it, and I have a funny feeling watching this footage back that actually it makes an impact on the tyres, because if I manage to get around in first place on the first lap, then why should I be crashing out over the rest? But we shall see the mistakes on offer as we screech and scrape away around these corners, and so far so good. Or maybe not, I'm not quite sure whether that meant that we actually screeched off the side of the road or got bumped from the rear. I'm not quite sure, but that means that we are now in second position. And this game isn't really on the competitive side when that kind of thing happens. But let's try again. Let's try to get that first place, and what happened then, I've no idea. Again, probably hit from the rear, and we are now in third. We are still in third in this particular race, and it's a miracle that we're still on the track at all, but we are surviving just. And according to this, I should be going on to another straight, and I think these graphics, well, as they would be playing on an Amiga or 428 AGA, I expect those to go at full frame rates, especially on the low resolution that we seem to have selected to play the game on. Unfortunately, if you skid out and decide to drive in the wrong direction, you will get a wrong direction heading on the top of your screen, but by that time you've already made that mistake, and I'm not quite sure how we're still in third position, but third position equals virtually no points in the championship, so well, let's cling on to that vague hope that this game is middle of the road enough to give us those points. And yet again, I can't help admiring the, well, I'm not sure whether this is supposed to be the cloud effect which we switched on, but yes, it is quite a good purple in the sky. According to this, we are still in third position when we cross that line, and so we gain a 49-second lap, and yet again those times have now disappeared, so the game is now unfortunately moving on to the next stage. And so let's see, the championship at this stage unfortunately is not going my way there with 9 points, which looks more like a 4. But let's move on to the next race, and it's another race, and it's another try at trying to get anywhere with this game. Similar to hard driving, if you hear that noise, it means you can more or less expect to be reset on that track, hopefully in the right direction. And yes, we are still in second position because, well, we haven't made too many serious offs. And it's great racing in this game when it actually happens and we're not simply running around a track on our own. So let's see if we can give this guy a race and let's see if he'll lead us around this track. I can't help feeling at this stage that the engine sounds quite a bit weaker than expected. There's nothing wrong with the skidding sound and the, well, sometimes co-driver type applause when we cross the line in a decent position isn't too bad. And that reminds me of decent rally games, of which this isn't. And yes, you can off-road like a rally game, and sometimes that's quite fun. But in the main, as long as we slow down for these hard corners, of which I didn't particularly do on that run, and that means we slid out the back and got reset, and that means I'm not quite sure which is the right direction. And so, yet again, the sky is darkening. It looks like it's going to be thundering or nighttime at any given second. And again, even despite these blunders, the game rewards us the insolence of third position. Despite trying to slow down for that corner, knowing it was ahead, the brakes on this thing are rather pathetic, so hopefully that's not going to change much of the order now. As it gets pretty dark with no headlights, we seem to be yet again in third position. And so the tunnel effects on that particular level are very fun, and I do like the bridges and things like that. And those things remind me yet again of greater rally games and stuff like Burnout and Burnout Paradise even. But unfortunately, this game with its sliding mechanic destroys the player's hopes as soon as they make any kind of mistake. And for my money, that really does ruin this game. But race 5 is the one that we're heading towards. It's called Indy. So, of course, that is not an oval, that is a street circuit named Indy, and of course we race that at night, without any headlights. So, let's set off and let's try not to crash in this street circuit and get lost in the streets. We are still in first position in this street circuit, and so it won't be long before I throw the car off and appear in third again. But for the moment, the thrill of first place and the fastest lap even gives us something to go for. One problem with these night courses is I'm falling asleep when I should be trying to anticipate these corners, and doing that means I'm dropping places when I really should be gaining places, and that yellow F1 car is streaming out into that distance. These races aren't hard, but I wouldn't say they're very interesting either, and certainly not a thrill ride, which no second prize demonstrated every second. And if this game reminds you of no second prize, it's no coincidence, because it's based on that engine, and the no second prize engine has not been used to great effect in this particular game. And we seem to have been racing all night. It's now getting light again, so put the eggs and bacon on. It's time for breakfast. That means we're in fourth, and as you heard, we're playing catch up with our eggs and bacon in the morning, and in the actual daytime we get to drive around another track. And so let's start the next race. It's race number 6, known as Triangle, so it's probably going to be a square shape. And so let's check this game out. Yes, this track really should be called Dead End, because that's what we get at the end of it. Unless you've broke half an hour before the stopping distance, then you won't have a cat in hell's chance of stopping for that particular corner. Under most circumstances, it's actually quicker to brake and be reset on the track than it is to slow down and try to make it, especially when our tyres are worn. And so, trying to catch up with the lead, here comes that corner again, and let's see how easy that is. Well, I did slow down only 45 minutes before the end of that corner, and unfortunately that wasn't enough to save me from going off, but let's try that again. We're still in second position, and so if this game continues, hopefully it means we can gain positions, and so it's not too tough even for experienced drivers. And I'm sure if I played this game to death, I'd be able to nail every single one of these easy courses, because there's nothing hairpin about these. There's nothing rally style. In fact, this is not a rally game, this is just a road race. And look at that, as long as you anticipate these things, you should be able to drive around them hell for leather, and I might even get lap record from this. Leading Lap MPV was developed by a company called Kellyan, which was based on two people, Patrick Kelly and Tony Dillon. And Tony Dillon started out writing for Sinclair User Magazine and went on to CMVG and also Commodore User, and then that turned into Amiga 64 and Amiga, and he was the games editor. So Tony Dillon, you may remember other guys from the Amiga generation, but I can only find the one picture of Tony Dillon, which is an illustration from his Spectrum days, so he probably doesn't look anything like that at the moment. The story I heard, I'm not absolutely sure whether this is true or not, but Tony Dillon apparently got wind of the No Second Prize engine whilst he was working at Amiga, and he offered to buy the engine from Thalion when they said that they was not going to release a No Second Prize 2.
Come on, keep pushing!
Tony Dillon and Patrick Kelly developed and devised this game, and most of the tracks as well, but the actual coding was done by Paul Stapley, who before this had also produced the Brutal Sports football game on the Amiga, and also the follow-up Wild Cup Soccer, both in 1994 for Millennium. And so Paul Stapley actually coded this and actually coded the tracks. The graphics was, well, Tony Dillon again and Paul Stapley, and they had some help with the graphics by Alex Berrigan, and that's his only game on the Amiga. And lastly, the music and the sound effects were John Haynes, and apparently this was also his only game on the Amiga. This game was meant to be released in 1995 on the Black Legend label, and stories said that Black Legend had already folded by this time, but that wasn't true because they carried on the PC until 1996. But in 1995 they basically sacked off all interest on the Amiga and along with this project. So it says Black Legend in the credits, but it was actually not them who actually published the game because this was unpublished on the Amiga. What actually happened was that the Amiga team published Leading Lap SE in April 1996, which contained 5 out of the 12 tracks, and in the very next issue, May 1996, Amiga printed an offer for an upgrade, or basically the full game, based on the SE version. So they actually did sell quite a few from the Amiga ad on that particular page 44 of that May issue. So even though this game was not released officially, this game is the full game that we're playing at the moment. If you actually sent off for that ad, which I found, I think, on the EAB file server, and I think at the moment this game is not really so impressive that it really needed to be very expensive. I'd say perhaps the budget price of $6.99 wouldn't have hurt this game, but still a non-release whatsoever. And these annoying bug factors, sometimes it's fun to go off-road and sometimes it isn't. These kinds of things, I can't help feeling that the game just needed a few tweaks to have been really good. As far as gameplay is concerned, well, with this particular car it seems to give a fighting chance, and I'm not quite sure whether I tried the other cars. I think I found those a bit too fast and a bit too unpredictable, but it is possible to get around those corners and it doesn't necessarily write off your chance of seeing the next course. But as we've seen, unless you get into those top positions, that's your championship over. And so at least we get to go through every single race, as long as you keep up the concentration and the enthusiasm for playing the game, when sometimes it's pretty difficult. Of course, with a figure of 8 shaped track, I can't really believe I made that serious blunder. That of course puts us at the back, and that destroys all of our chances. So let's speed up that footage again at 300%, and as you can see, there is not much wrong with the game. But for an AGA game, which required a decent CPU, I think that this was massively superseded by No Second Prize, which had more riders on the track, and more obstacles and things to jump over and oil, and it had more going on. Yes, this seems to be packed with scenery and more modern elements which were present in 90s games, but unfortunately there isn't enough in the way of gameplay here. On the Amiga, you can see that we're not having much luck with this particular track in 5th, and I can only just barely make myself drive around it in final position and hope that somehow we get to the line so that I can check out that next track. And as I say, I do like some of the features, but the hills in the background don't appear to change from level to level. They are the same hills, which appear nothing like actual hills and look more like Monument Valley again. And so here we go, it appears that we're driving on Mars at the moment, and that really doesn't improve our sense of direction. But here we go, that's the person that's actually won the race, and we're driving in the wrong direction, unfortunately in last position, trying to be bumped out of the way. Hopefully this game will quit itself eventually and force us back to the next circuit. On to race 8 of 12, it's known as the freeway, and I very much doubt that this race will give us a freeway into first position, and of course I've never seen it before. I'm not quite sure what those things were at the side of the road, maybe rocks or even caravans. I seem to be passing something new in the game, but you can see that one wrong direction means unfortunately I need to practice this if I was to play it, and as usual practice makes perfect on a game like this. That brings us on to the scores. The lowest score came again from Amiga Power, who awarded this game 57%. The current score on the Lemon Amiga database is 59%. Amiga Format awarded the game 77%. Amiga awarded it 87%. And Amiga Computing gave the game 90%. Which gives Leading Lap MPV AGA a rewarding 7.5 out of 10. And I'm not quite sure what I would give this game. I'd probably give it a 6 for effort, but not quite sure if it deserves more than that. And maybe your luck will vary, and if you can get used to these courses, of course, maybe you can get some fun from the game. But for now, let's just press escape and let's quit the game, and let's just say thank you very much for checking out another play guide and review, and I hope to see you again on another review sometime soon. Thank you.